And the Young Turks, pretty much our DNA is get money out of politics. Every other problem in America, it's a domino effect that starts with the money. Where do you think that the kind of toxic relationship between our officials being bought off by the money? I mean, perfect example. Rick Perry just became energy secretary. Well, Energy Transfer Partners is his number two donor, almost 2 million over his career. Kelsey Warren, specifically the CEO. Uh, in terms of kind of the financial corruption, how does that play a part here?
Oh, I mean yeah, that's that's at the core of it. That's exactly hitting the nail on the head. We can't even begin to hope for real change until we get money out of politics. We just can't because all our political leaders have been bought off. And Rick Perry is a great example of that. He not only was accepted major donations from ETP, now he's on the ETP board. As soon as he stepped down as governor, he got on the ETP board. Now he's going to be energy secretary. There's no conflict of interest there. So yeah, I think money in politics that is a no-brainer. That it has ever been even allowed is mind-boggling to me. We've got to do that. We can't begin to hope for any deep, meaningful change until that happens. Everything else is predicated on that. It's critical.
Do you think a lot of the more conservative landowners who, as we've spoke about, have had their eyes opened, are starting to become more aware of how money is buying off these politicians?
I do. I think if and I haven't spoken to them about this subject specifically, but my feeling is that if there's one thing that we could all agree about, it would be that. And I think most people feel that way. As that veil that I talk about is lifted and we see the depth of corruption, it just becomes so evident that we have got to get money out of politics or we have no chance of winning, ever, because money corrupts. And it's self-evident. So yeah, it's an absolutely critical thing, and I'm happy to know that that initiative is underway because we can't even start to move forward in other realms if we don't do that. It's number one.
Well, I think also this phrase has been in politics for a long time, but people voting against their own interests. I think what you're seeing in places like this is people starting to understand what their interests are more,
Right.
and how the politicians that supposedly talk a good game, tell them what they want to hear, are against their interests.
Yeah, very much so. And I think that there's, the Republicans sort of, it's inherent in their ideology that there's cognitive dissonance. They talk out of two sides of their mouth, and they can't completely be at one with their real belief system, what they espouse to believe, and then the way they actually act and the way they actually behave are two different things. And so it seems to me that it's kind of a schizophrenic existence, and they may be fine with that, but I think thinking people who really have the capacity to understand and analyze it realize that it's not a workable system. Absolutely not.
And real quick, I know you're an archaeologist. The archaeological component of this, can you kind of talk about what in Standing Rock they've dug up sacred sites, sacred 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 rocks have been lost, sacred things like that. Here, how does the archaeological component come into play?
Well, it's devastating to archaeology, just as it's devastating to the natural world and natural resources. But the thing about it is, out here, uh, all the land that they're crossing is private land. Almost none of it has been surveyed, archaeologically or otherwise. And so the thing is, we don't even know what we stand to lose. We don't even know what we've lost. That's There's one case where I do know what we lost because I was there and I witnessed it, and that was the site at Trap Spring. It's probably one of the most significant archaeological sites in the entire region because it has incredible time depth. It's got a whole array of different kinds of features. It's got the capacity to teach us a whole lot about the past, about our
What kind of artifacts are there?
they run the gamut. You get dart points, for example, that are 5 to 7,000 years old, and then projectile points that come all the way up to several hundred years ago. So you get dart points, you get arrow points, you get bifaces, you get scrapers, you get groundstone, which is manos and metates. We also had a bedrock mortar, an array of bedrock mortar holes, which are these holes that they used as prehistoric grinding appliances. And that's just a few things. I mean, the other things or features that we have that are things that can't be moved, and those are typically cooking type features like burned rock middens and hearths and stone structures, the wikia bases that they had built, and even some historic tent foundations. So it kind of runs the gamut. And the great thing about the Trap Spring site, the really interesting thing about it, was that you had not only a lot of time depth, but you had an almost continuous occupation through time. And so it's sites like that that have the capacity to teach us a great deal about prehistory and even about the proto-historic period. It's these periods of time that we know very little about. And so Trap Spring is one of those rare sites that has that capacity to teach us so much about our history, about our past. And for ETP to go through it like that is just to take the pages of history and rip it out of the book and throw it to the wind. You can't retrieve it. It will never come back. The damage that they've done is forever. Their own archaeologists recommended that they avoid the site. They ignored their own archaeologists, and they completely ignored me. They completely ignored the landowner, and they ignored the Texas Historical Commission. The site qualified for the highest honors bestowed upon sites in the state of Texas. It also qualifies for the highest honors bestowed on sites at the national level. And yet, despite those things, they saw to it just to plow right through the site. They cut through the southern third of this site. 125-foot wide swath destroyed.